All right, I'm gonna do this just for old time's sake because it'll crack a few smiles. What's up, everybody? Peter McKinnon here. Welcome back to yet another video. Today we are talking about street photography, but shooting 35mm black and white street photography in Paris. I am not a street photographer. This is not something that I do. I've never actually done it. I made a video about street photography years ago, it might have been 2018, inappropriately titled street photography, where it was more urban photography, and I corrected that, and then from that moment started following proper street photographers. You look at someone like the likes of Joe Greer, who's actually in the trenches, very guerrilla style approach to photographing life as it is and happens around you in the streets. We're talking candid portraits, life in motion, frames that tell stories. It's actually quite fascinating and very difficult to do, a lot harder to do than it would appear. And if you've ever watched someone like Joe Greer shoot in the streets, it's pretty wild. I need to make a video with Joe because I would love for my audience to witness his approach to photography and just watch him at work. It's pretty fascinating, but I digress. I brought a single roll of film to Paris, 36 shots, HP5 Ilford black and white film. I only had one day, several hours, and I knew that I'd be able to get at least a roll of film in. Now, one of the things I'm realizing when shooting film is you need to be, I feel, pretty intentional with it. The whole point of this is to be more methodical, less spray and pray, more planning every 36 shots, or at least going out with the intent to finish a roll. And I gotta say, I was pretty nervous. I used to shoot film a decade ago. I used to shoot weddings with a medium format Contax 645 camera. We would shoot 120 film and then bag all of our rolls and ship them off to LA to get processed with no tracking. Canada Post, and that's terrifying to think about. I would never do that now. But hey, we're living on the edge, right? Nothing mattered when you were 22 years old. But here we are, quite a bit later, shooting 400 speed film. So this acts as your image sensor. You can't just change the ISO on the fly. You have to choose which film you're gonna shoot. This is 400 speed film. This is 200 speed film. So depending on what you're doing, that comes back to being intentional. You choose the film stock which is most appropriate for what you're planning to shoot. Sometimes you don't always know, which is why I've found it's more helpful to go out with a plan than to just wing it. There's something funny that happens when you start shooting film. If I was to just flash some of these photos that I've taken, you might not even know they were Peter McKinnon photos. It's one of my friends, Mike, said, I'm looking at these pictures, and if you hadn't sent them to me and I had just seen them on someone's account somewhere or posted on a blog or flipping through a photo book, I wouldn't even really know that they were from Peter McKinnon. Your brain kind of flips to a different way of seeing the world when you're shooting film. Maybe it's the fact that you're slowing down and you're taking the time to compose each shot. You're taking the time to meter each shot. You're looking for more of a story. You're looking for a different feeling out of a photograph than you are when you're shooting digital. You can shoot as much as you want. You can fill memory cards. You can make sure you're getting that perfect exposure. There is no high risk because you can just keep going. One of the things that fascinates me as well with this whole medium is no safety net. There are no second chances. You get 36 shots, expose it once, get it right or don't. That's kind of it. But that thought process of making every frame count has yielded more good photos out of a single 36 exposure roll than if I shoot 600 RAWs at a live show. I came back with 36 shots from Paris. I could probably, and I would happily post more than 25 of them. That is a crazy turnaround. If I was typically taking my digital camera and shooting as I normally do, I would come home with hundreds. You go to a trip, you go to Iceland, you come home with thousands of photos, and you might post 15 to 20. That yield is far lower than what I'm finding so far is my yield coming back with processed film. And this is what's been fascinating me about shooting with this format. This is a little camera cube that I've been carrying my whole 35mm setup in. All the things you need, nothing you don't. And then I've just been dumping this whole thing in my regular bag where my headphones and other travel stuff goes. I've got a light meter with a ridiculously long lanyard. Does the job, it's nice and small, gives you those readings. Got a Sharpie and a roll of tape so I can label off the canisters so I know what I shot when I come back with a whole handful. Now I think as I shoot more and go on longer trips, I'm gonna have to adjust this, but for a 2-day in and out, I think 4 rolls for me does the job just fine. And then beyond that, the camera itself with a 35mm lens on it, and all of that tucked into this little case fits exceptionally well. And if I'm going through the airport, I can just hand them this case and ask for it to be hand checked because there is sensitivity film inside. And this little setup makes that pretty easy. All right, before we dive in and show you some more of the photos from this Paris roll, we're thanking the sponsor of today's video, the sponsor of the channel, which is Motion Array. It is brands and people like Motion Array that enable us to make cool stories and cool videos like this, where we can go to Paris and shoot stuff and come back and educate everybody that likes to enjoy the content on this channel and many others. Now, speaking of content, they are a place that houses a ton of assets for you to make your own content. Be that you need templates, motion templates, an entire amalgamation of things, a toolkit, if you will. Like for instance, we're talking black and whites, we're talking about film. Let's make this shot black and white. Needs a little more. How about you look up like film grain? Yeah, there you go. How about a light leak? A little from the side. Give me that film strip. That's a key one. That's an important one. All right, clean. These types of things made super easy. If you are editing in Premiere or After Effects, there are plugins that they offer so you can install those and use it even faster and more seamless. Getting things locked in and tight so that your job is easier and your output is better. It's all about that workflow. You can try it for free. You won't get access to everything, but it's a good way to know if it's something that'll help you and your business. You can pay monthly or you can pay annually to save a bit of money. There's no additional fees. You can use the assets however and whenever you want. There are no conditions on that. And if you do sign up annually, you can save $50 off that annual cost by using the link in my description below if you want to get started today. So thank you, Motion Array, for sponsoring this video, for sponsoring me and this channel. I very much appreciate the support. Again, it's companies like this that allow me to do what I do so that you can do what you do. All right, now check out some of these dope black and white photos. So this particular shot of the stairwell going down, there's something about it that I love. There's a richness to it. There's a history that I can feel more from the photo than if it was digital. Take this photo, for instance, of this couple sitting on the grass. I would never, ever have taken this photo with all the tourists down below on the sidewalk walking by their cars. The focal point isn't necessarily very, very clear. You've got the city in the background. You've got a lot of lawn in the foreground. There's richness and emotion that's pulling from these frames when I look at these photos that I just haven't seen before in my work. Maybe that's why my friend Mike said you wouldn't even know Pete took these. Now, I will point out, shooting in Paris helps significantly. The old architecture, the old cars, the outfits, it all kind of lends to exceptional black and white street photography. So I will say Paris definitely helps make these photos great. But I've shot at this spot. I believe they shot John Wick 4 at this spot. I've shot the Eiffel Tower from that spot many times. But here's a black and white from HP5, and this might be my favorite shot of the Eiffel Tower I've ever taken. The reflection from the rain in the morning, the people with the umbrellas perfectly placed there. It's real, it's raw. That film grain looks so good and it's natural. You don't have to go into Lightroom and crank the grain. It's naturally coming out of the process. And I love that. I think what I had most fun with when I was just walking around playing tourist, trying to be a street photographer, was literally just taking pictures of people living their lives. This couple sharing music sitting on the same steps of the photo I just took seconds earlier. It's cool to be able to just capture life happening. I feel like I haven't done that in a long time, or I've never done it. This gentleman having a cigarette and an espresso in a side alley of Paris just felt so Paris. I don't speak French, but I was able to motion to him, "Can I take your picture? Can you take a drag of your cigarette?" He did so, he held it, took the shot, and it's one of my favorite pictures I've taken in a long time. Also, I was very nervous to get all of these in focus. Pulling focus with a rangefinder really quick when you've asked someone to take a drag of a cigarette, you don't speak the language, they're doing you a favor, high pressure, high stakes, no safety net. I was a little nervous. I was shooting everything at 1,000th of a second at f8 at 1600 ISO, pushing this 2 stops. So there's a little bit of sending that roll in thinking, Godspeed, hope that works out. Now, there are going to be times when I get that back and it didn't work out. I accidentally exposed a few frames of a roll when trying to reload the camera, and I made a mistake and it didn't wind it all the way, and beginner's error. But one of those frames that did survive was the portrait from the film video we just did with Angel, and the shot I did take of him is the only shot that worked out. And there's a beautiful natural light leak No effects, no Lightroom, no Photoshop. This is just what it looks like. It's even more special now for that reason. Now, you'll see these all on my Instagram over the next couple of weeks. I don't want to spoil them all yet, so apologies if my profile just goes straight black and white for the next few weeks. I don't know. They shot Hunger Games in this spot. It looks pretty cool and desolate. I mean, just walking up to the side window while this gentleman's reading a newspaper and just getting in pretty close with a 35mm lens, winding it back, metering him whilst he's still reading, and then just taking the frame. He doesn't even move or budge. There's a bit of confidence it takes to do that. It reminds me of when I started vlogging. I distinctly remember walking through an airport at one point. Airports are the worst for vlogging. There's so many people. Maybe now it's better in 2023 because like media and cameras are everywhere and there are people, oh, a vlogger. But in 2016, 2017, it was a lot harder. And holding your giant 1DX Mark II camera with a huge fuzzy microphone, turning up that vlog voice, all right, and then talking to yourself, walking through the airport to your gate, it took a lot of getting used to. I'm not sure that I'm even still used to it now, but it's just something I had to do, and I just did it, and I got it done. And I'm not saying I didn't like it, or I hated it. I obviously liked it enough that I did it for years, but I'm feeling that same butterfly effect, that same excitement, that same nerve-wracking uncertainty when walking up to people just living their lives to shoot frames that I never otherwise would have shot with a digital camera. That's exciting as a photographer. And that's what I'm trying to share or portray through this video to you. I think it's pretty cool to say that like nearly 20 years into shooting and being a photographer, I'm still learning and I'm still excited, and that spark inside me is still getting ignited, where I wake up in the morning and I'm so excited to figure out what I can go photograph so I can practice, get some scans back, and keep learning the craft that is photography.